Welcome to part 3 of the Myriad training course. In this video, we'll be covering the dashboard, live and auto fade playout, segue editing, voice tracking, on-air, off-air status, smart info panel, and the pad. So grab a coffee and let's get started. In most layouts, the dashboard will be located directly above the log. The best way of considering the dashboard is when Myriad is in an active playout mode, it will show you a summary of what is currently playing and what will be played soon. In the example here, we can see a song by Calvin Harris is playing. There is 2 minutes and 25 seconds left of that song, and currently at the end of this song, the chain type is a green circle, which means it will automatically move on to the next item. The most important button on the dashboard is the Go button. This button, when pressed, will automatically move on to the next item in the log. In this case, it's playing the jingle, and because we have a green chain type, it has automatically moved on to the next song, which is the right song by Tiesto. The player indicator shows you which media player is being used to play the currently playing item. In this case, it's media player 3. If we drop down the button, we can see we have a couple of other options: Show in Smart Info and Dump. Show in Smart Info will update the Smart Info panel to show the information for the item that is playing, and the Dump button will immediately stop playing the current item, and as we are currently in auto fade mode, will automatically move on to the next item. We have similar options on the drop-down buttons for the next few items listed in the dashboard. Here you can see Show in Smart Info. Also, we have Play Now, which would be the same as pressing Go. Queue, which will queue the item into a player. And finally, Dump, which in this case will actually remove the item from the log. When the next item is queued, the player that will be used is displayed. Some items will have a sweeper. Here we can see in the log that before I Don't Want to Live Forever is played, a sweeper will be played. And this plus indicator indicates that this sweeper will be embedded into the intro of the song. In the dashboard, this is shown by the box here, which indicates that there will be a sweeper. Let's see what happens when we press Go. Here you can see the sweeper is playing along with the song. As we continue in the intro, we have a countdown counting down to the intro, and the background is filling in green. As the intro finishes, the progress bar snaps back to its normal position, just like it does in the players. If you hover over the item, you can also pause it. And once paused, you can resume by playing. When in a live show, you can change the change type by simply clicking on the icon to the right of the dashboard. This will change both in the dashboard and in the log. You could do this for upcoming items in the dashboard as well. If the album art is available, it will be displayed here. If we hover over the album art, we can see we also have an option for Show Item in Smart Info. Along the bottom of the dashboard, we have some key information. The first timing shows us how much time if content is available left in this hour. So in this case, there is 24 minutes and 18 seconds worth of content still left to play within this hour. If we go to the right, we can see that this will actually result in an underrun of 5 minutes and 57 seconds, i.e. there's around 30 minutes left of time in this hour, but only 24 minutes of content, giving us nearly 6 minutes of underrun. Now, if I add in some more songs, we can see the underrun becomes an overrun, as we now have 35 minutes worth of content and only 30 minutes to fit it in, giving us an overrun of 5 minutes. If we were in auto fade mode, this overrun will be nailed at 0, as Myriad will handle both over and underrunning hours. Back in live mode, this indicator here shows us how long in time there is until the next stop point is reached. So here we can see red is currently playing, and we've got a stop chain type at the end of BBMac. And the end of BBMac will actually be in 13 minutes and 2 seconds. If I was to change to put a stop at the end of Chainsmokers, you can see this has been updated to be 5 minutes and 56 seconds. The end type for the song is also displayed next to the countdown. It might be a S for sustain, an F for fade, an E for an end, or an SF for a slow fade. The power button allows you to toggle between standby and the active playout mode for the hour that you are currently in. Some layout configurations include dashboards that don't have album art, such as the widescreen layout as seen here. Finally, let's look at a few key settings for the dashboard. Go to the Settings menu, Database Settings, onto the Stations tab, and then double-click on the station you want to work on. Here we want to look at the Schedule Log tab, and the bit we're interested in is the top section of the log playback editing options. The first thing we're going to look at is how many items should be queued and therefore shown in the dashboard. Currently, this is set to 3 items. However, by increasing or decreasing this number, you can change how many lines are shown in the dashboard. Also, we can say how many items to queue into players ahead. This is normally only set to 1, but can be set higher if required. Finally, for key settings for the dashboard is the delay queuing the next item setting. This allows you to decide whether items should be queued immediately for the next thing to play, or whether they should only be queued X many seconds before they are needed. So, if this option is not ticked, then whenever an item starts playing, the next item in the log will automatically be queued at the same time. If this item is ticked, then the next item will only be queued into a player 30 seconds from the end of the current item. That's it for dashboard. Next, we're going to look at how using the dashboard and the log together can be used for live and automated programming. Before we move on to using the log and dashboard for presenting live or automated shows, it's a good idea to revisit what the active playout modes actually are in Myriad Playout. There are 3 modes that the log and the dashboard can be in. The first one, standby, which is the mode we're in now, is effectively it's switched off. It's not going to play anything or do anything unless we tell it to manually. If we switch to live mode, however, then we control the flow of audio. In live mode, the presenter can control things. They can change what happens at the end of each item, so they can change the change type between a stop, a go, or a sweeper. And the presenter is also in control of back timing. So here you can see that currently we're overrunning, and it's the presenter's responsibility to be able to take things out of the log and actually control that back timing. If we switch to auto fade mode, you'll see that all the red dots become green circles, which means that it won't stop. And that's because in auto fade mode, Myriad carries on playing until it gets to the end of the hour. Also, in auto fade mode, Myriad is responsible for back timing to the top of the hour. So the overrun would normally be 0. Let's press go and see what happens. There you can see The system was underrunning for a few seconds, so it added another track. I then jigged the timing around so that everything works and the overrun is set to 0. Generally, autofade is used whenever Myriad is being used for playout and there isn't a presenter in the studio. Live is used whenever there's a presenter in front of the mixing desk and actually driving the system. And standby should be used for any studios or workstations that aren't the on-air machine. Now let's take a look at how you can use live mode to present a live radio show. First thing to do is pop it into live mode. As you can see, it's queued the first item into player 1 and is waiting for a go. You can also see that Take That has a 5-second intro, so when we press go, we get a countdown for 5 seconds, which as a radio presenter, we can talk over. So this is Take That. I'm a radio presenter and I'm talking over the intro of my song. Now the song will continue for the next 3 minutes and 20 seconds until it gets to the end. Because the chain type on this song is a green circle, when it gets to the end, it will automatically segue into the next item. I'm just going to jump the player forward here so you can see that in action. Now we've muted the sound here from the music just so that YouTube allows us to play them. As you can see, it's automatically segued into basement jacks. Now let's say we wanted to talk at the end of this track. We simply change the chain type to be a stop. I'll fast forward to the end of the basement jacks. It's counting down the last 5 seconds now. And when it gets to end, the system will simply stop. As a presenter, I can now put up my fader, talk, I can play a favorite if I wanted to. And when I'm ready, I just press the go button for the next item to start. Now the next item in the log is actually a sweeper. As you can see on the dashboard, the next item we have is John Gibbons, with the sweeper already embedded into it. The way this works is if I forward to the end of this track, you'll see it's queued the sweeper. However, the sweeper also has a loop on it. So let's change to a different sweeper. And we could do that even a few seconds before we need to. So it's coming to the end. Chain smokers have got a stop on it. Let's quickly change that to be green so it will automatically move into the next item. Here you can see it's playing the sweeper over the intro of the song. Next, let's look at some back timing when in a live show. Currently, there are 30 minutes and 47 seconds of content left in this hour, and it's roughly half past the hour. So actually, we're on track with an overrun of only 12 seconds. If, however, I add another song in, we can see that the overrun has now gone to 4 minutes and 12 seconds. So I would need to deal with this in a live show. I could deal with this by soft or permanently deleting items. So let's try removing this item here. You can see we've still got an overrun of 1 minute. If I deleted another item, that overrun becomes an underrun of 2 minutes and 57 seconds. In a live show, it's my responsibility to juggle this and make it so that when I get to the end of the show, it's on time. Contrast this with an auto fade hour. In an auto fade hour, the system manages the back timing automatically. As you can see, the overrun is at 0, and all of the stops have been changed to go. It does this by dropping some songs and fading some other songs early. We can switch back to live at any time by clicking on the live button. So as you can see, currently we're overrunning by 4 minutes and 12 seconds. So let's try removing this song here, the Chainsmokers. We're now back to our 12-second overrun. I can, of course, deal with this by pressing go at any time. As you can see, we're now underrunning by 1 minute and 17 seconds. But that's okay, because when I get to the end of this track, I'm going to talk for a short while, and that will take some of the underrun out. If I stop to talk here, and maybe a little bit further down the show, each time I talk, I'll take away some of the underrun, and my aim is to get back on track so that my show finishes exactly at the top of the hour. Now let's look at a show that's set for auto-fade mode. The current hour is in auto-fade mode, it's 12:50, and it is running pretty much 100% to time. Of course, in auto-fade mode, it always runs to time. It has done this by deciding what songs need to be played, what ones should be dropped, and what ones should be faded out early. You can see here, it's fading a small amount of time off of Stargirl by McFly in order to keep up to time. If we were to fast forward, this will mess up the timing. We're now 2 minutes under, but that's okay. We're in auto fade mode. So at the next segue, the system will correct the problem. However, because we're only a few minutes from the end of the hour, it's had to do some more extreme fading off of Callum Scott in order to keep running to time. You'll also notice everything is green. You cannot change to a red stop chain type in an auto-faded hour. Now let's turn our attention to the Segue editor. The Segue editor is used for editing segues between items in the log. It is also used for adding voice tracks to the log. The Segue editor can appear in a couple of different ways. We have a pop-out button on the ribbon that allows us to access the Segue editor. Some layouts also have a Segue editor directly built into them. Some layouts are built around the Segue editor. During this demonstration, though, we'll be focusing on a default layout and using the pop-out Segue editor. But what do we mean by Segue editing, and how can we use that in a live show or when preparing a show? Well, Segue editing is simply the way of reviewing the way that the system is going to automatically play two items back to back and adjusting it if you need to. So let's have a look at this transition here. Click on the Segue editor and we load up the end of the previous track and the start of the next one. We can review it by pressing the play button. So that's how the system will segue between those two items. However, if we don't like the way it sounds, we can edit it by simply dragging the lower item to the left or the right. If you're happy with the segue, simply click on the Save button. If you happen to be editing a segue in the current hour, you must have on-air control in order to be able to edit the segues. Sometimes you may want to change the volume as well. You can do that using the volume envelope section. Click on the envelope, add extra volume dip points, change the way it's going to sound. Perfect. I'm going to save that one now. But let's say it wasn't perfect and we wanted to go back to the original segue. We can simply click on the revert button and that will put the segue back to the way it was originally intended. You may also have noticed how each time I made an adjustment, the segue editor started playing. There's an option you can adjust using the cog settings button here. If you don't want it to play automatically, you can untick the play automatically options. There are a couple of other things in here that we can also adjust. The number of seconds we'll hear on segues. 10 seconds may be too much, so you may want to change that. You can also change the volume at which the segue editor will start recording when in voice track mode, but more on that in a minute. Finally, if you're on a slower system and you don't want to show the waveforms, you can turn those off. If you need to see more detail, or you need to see more of the items, you can zoom in and out using the plus and minus buttons. You can also scrub the area on view by moving this area here. Finally, when you are playing things, you can use the right mouse button to jump around within the waveform. The other main function of the Segue editor is for voice tracking. Voice tracks are voice links that are recorded into automated programming. The easiest way to demonstrate how to add voice tracks to a show is to just go ahead and show you. So let's do it. First of all, click on the Segue editor. This will open the standard Segue editor we've been looking at. Here we can see we're going to record a voice track between the Sugar Babes and the Chainsmokers. To do this, all we need to do is click on the voice tracking button and it will play us the end of the Sugar Babes. And then when we want to actually start recording our voice link, we need to simply start talking. Finally, we'll push this button again, although the icon will change, to start the Chainsmokers. So let's see it in practice. Okay, as soon as I start talking, the system starts recording and you can see my voice track is being added here. You can also see that the Chainsmokers is currently being pushed along the timeline as I'm talking. To start the Chainsmokers, simply click on the button here. It carries on playing and of course I carry on recording. So when I'm ready to finish my voice link, all I need to do is hit the stop button here. It'll say, do you want to save the voice link? We can say yes or no. Let's say yes. Okay, so there's our voice link. Let's listen to it. Okay, as soon as I start talking, the system starts recording and you can see my voice track is being added here. You can also see that the Chainsmokers is currently being pushed along the timeline as I'm talking. To start the Chainsmokers, simply click on the button here. It carries on playing and of course I carry on recording. So when I'm ready to finish my voice link, all I need to do is hit the stop button. Okay, so there's our voice link. Everything looked good, but maybe I got the timing slightly wrong, so don't forget I can still move things around in here or in here. And as you can see here, I can even move things like that. And you can see the envelope editing is automatically moving with my voice link. If I'm happy with that, I can hit save. If however I don't want it, I can also click on the abandon, which will remove the voice link and allow me to start again. Let's save it. Now that we've finished that one, we can simply scroll down the log, looking for the next place to add a voice link. Before we move on from the Segue editor, let's have a quick look at what happens when we actually highlight an item that is going to be swept into the items surrounding it. So if I double click on this sweeper, it will open up what we call the triple line Segue editor. So it's very similar to the voice track we saw earlier, only this is showing us how it's going to sweep into the intro. So here we can see very clearly the way it's going to work. And we can adjust this just like we did our voice tracks. So we can move things around, we can decide to edit things. You'll notice that some of the envelopes are dotted. This means that the system has automatically set them and nobody has manually set them. As soon as we add our own envelope points, they become a full line, which means that they're fixed in stone. And just as before, if we want to save the positioning of this sweeper, just click on the save button. Let's move down along a couple of items and have a look at another sweeper. Here we can see the way the Myriad is going to play this sweeper is embedded into the intro of the song. However, if you click on this button here, it will change the ending so that instead of it being a sweeper, it is now a green circle, which means it will just play in sequence. So the end of the song, then the jingle, then the next song. If I convert it back to a sweeper, it is embedded into the intro of the song again. Also, you'll notice if you edit any of the envelope points, you get this undo button appear on the line. You can simply click on it to reset the envelope editing back to its original state. Voice tracking is one of the most powerful features inside Myriad and can make a real difference to your station. With a bit of practice, you should be able to voice track several hours of programming in mere minutes. There's also the option for remote voice tracking using RVT and also voice tracking via a web browser using Myriad Anywhere RVT and Myriad Anywhere Cloud RVT. But more on those on a separate video. The on-air, off-air button is always located in the top right-hand corner of your primary Myriad Playout screen, and it is used for three primary things. Firstly, it is used to determine which workstation should be feeding information to OCP, which in turn will be fed on to things like now playing information on your website or DLS text on your DAB transmitter. Secondly, when items are played, they are logged, and the system keeps track of which workstation is on air, so you can filter your play logs to only show workstations that are on air or both on air and off air. This helps you to determine which tracks were played on air, which may have a bearing on your copyright reporting. Finally, the off-air, on-air status helps to protect the currently playing hour. In general terms, only the on-air workstation is able to edit the current hour. Let's take a look at how that works in practice. You can see from my system time that it is currently 20 past 8 in the evening, and I'm looking at the 8 o'clock hour, which means I'm looking at the current hour in time. However, I do not have on-air control. You can see I'm currently off-air. That means if I try and pick something up and drop it into the log, I get an icon telling me that I can't do it. And even if I try, it doesn't happen. Similarly, I can't pick things up and move them around within the log. I just can't edit the log because I'm not the on-air workstation. Conversely, if I click on the off-air button to take on-air control, you can see I now have on-air control, and I can move things around in the log or drag in new content. Having only the on-air machine be able to edit the current hour is a safety feature for good reason. However, it can be overridden on a per user basis should you require. Go to Settings, User Management, Edit Contacts and Users, select the user you want to change the setting for, go into Security, and I'm going to use specific permissions. Click on Edit Specific Permissions. Here on the Station Permissions tab, you can see the option for can edit the on-air hour from anywhere. With this option set, if I log into the system, I can edit the on-air hour regardless of whether I have on-air control. Save the settings, and you're done. Right next to the on-air button, you might see a data collection settings button. This allows you to change the settings for data collection, which either allows you to either opt in or opt out of anonymous usage data. This sends us information about your system, although we can't see who you are or where you are, but it does help us to make the system more reliable and to increase features. If you want to turn it off, click no. If you want to leave it on, click yes, then hit OK. Once you've okayed it, the message disappears. Some layouts feature the Smart Info panel, which is designed to give you live information about the artist and song that you have selected, plus also some information about traffic and travel in your area and what the weather will be. Let's take a look. At the top of the Smart Info panel is the general information. It includes the song title and the artist and year of release. If you click on a different item on the media wall, the Smart Info panel will update. On the summary page, you can see a summary of all the information available in Smart Info. Here we can see Wikipedia's summary page for Katy Perry, and we can find out what her real name is, when she was born, and a little bit about her past. You can also see what Katy's been up to on Twitter. The Traffic and Travel panel gives you highlight information about traffic and travel in your area. And finally, the Weather panel tells you the summary of the weather in your area. If you want to see any of this in more detail, you can click on the individual tabs so you can see Wikipedia information in full, Twitter information in full, also some notes, traffic and travel details, and weather. Now, we didn't see notes on the original summary screen, and that's simply because it was turned off. If you click on the drop-down options wheel here, you can choose which tabs to show in the summary and which tabs to show in general. So if we wanted to add the notes to the summary, we could do. Or if we decided we didn't want to see Twitter at all, we could remove it altogether. In general, when you click on an item in the media wall or in a log, smart info will be updated accordingly. But you can inhibit this by selecting the option on each one of those to not show smart info. So with that turned off, even if I click in the log, it won't update smart info, but the media wall still will. The other thing that might happen is you may want to hold on to something, in which case, if you click on the pin button, it will stop smart info from updating at all. So if you need to read the script from something, you can do so by simply pinning it in place, and when you don't need it anymore, unpin it. A few moments ago, we saw an item that had a bit of a problem. Let's take another look. If you highlight this item, you can see that there is no Wikipedia or Twitter information, and in fact, there's an exclamation warning us that this could be an issue. Now, the problem with this item is that it's got two artists, DJ Snake and featuring Justin Bieber. Smart Info is currently looking for DJ Snake featuring Justin Bieber as a single artist. We can easily fix that though by finding out the media item number, in this case 3187, and hitting edit. Here we can see that the problem is DJ Snake featuring Justin Bieber are down as a single artist. We can also see that there's a little exclamation icon to the right. If we click on it, it will ask us if we want to fix the problem. You can read this in your own time, but basically if we hit yes, what it'll do is put DJ Snake on one artist line, Justin Bieber on the second artist line, and then create a by field for DJ Snake featuring Justin Bieber. If we hit save, and then close this down, Smart Info will now show us the results for either DJ Snake or Justin Bieber. But wait, DJ Snake's information on Wikipedia wasn't correct. You can see there's no results. Well, this happens sometimes because the algorithm we use to find people's artists' pages on Wikipedia isn't perfect. But you can choose yourself by clicking on the little search icon here. This will show you results from Wikipedia for the artist name. If we click on DJ Snake, see if it's the right one, here is the information. If we're certain this is the correct information, we can hit on the Save button, and from now on, whenever we highlight that item again, the Wikipedia information will be displayed. We could, of course, do the same thing for Twitter if that's not correct. Choose a different Twitter feed, hit OK, and there we have the updated Twitter feed. The pad is a really useful multi-function tool within Myriad Playout. It can be used for many different features, so we're going to go through all of the things it can do and some of the reasons you may wish to use it. First thing to do is switch to a layout that includes a pad. Pad is basically a manual playlist creation tool. So in the simplest sense, you simply drag things in that you want to play in your playlist. So if I want to add this song, I can pick it up and drag it. If I go to my jingles section, I can drag a jingle in. I can also drag from the log, from the library, or from favorites. You can also add things by going to the media or highlighting an item, and then on the Home tab, clicking on Add to Pad. Or using the right-click menu, you can also add to pad using the menu option, or Control A. Control A is a very quick way of adding lots of content. Now that we've added some content, let's have a look at the pad. We can see from the pad we have 14 items, and the total runtime is 41 minutes exactly. The first thing we could do with this pad is we could just simply play it. Click on the play button, and the first item will be queued up into a player. Press the play, and it will start playing. When it gets to the end of the current item, it just moves on to the next one automatically. If you wish to stop the pad playing, you have to click on the stop button first, and then eject the media item that is in the player. Now let's say that we wanted to save this pad for later. We can click on the pad, do save pad to a file. Give the file a name, and there we have it saved. Later on, if I clear the pad by clicking on the new button and go to pad open and load up my file, you can see our pad is restored. Let's add a little more detail to our pad so that we can actually use it to generate something that could be ultimately put in the log. We can move things around within the pad. We can also add in additional content. We can also add in pauses, anywhere where we might want to stop and talk. Once you've finished building your show on a pad, go to the Pad tab, choose Save Pad. This time I'm just going to call it My Log Export. It's OK. That's now saved. Now you may recall from a previous video that you can import a file into an empty hour in the log. So here we have an empty hour. If we click on the Hour Import tab, drop down the Schedule Log Import, and then choose Single Hour from the log, you can choose the hour you want. So My Log Export, hit OK or hit Open. It will ask you to confirm which hour you want to put it into. I want to put it into the, which one is it? The 9 o'clock hour. So I'm going to put it in on today's date into the 9 o'clock hour. It's OK. And here you can see the thing that we created in the pad has now been added to the log. And wherever we put a pause in the pad, there's a stop point in the log. So you can manually create shows on the pad, save them, and then load them into the log as required. If you want to add your pad directly to the log, you can click on the Mix Send tab, then click on Send to Log. Again, we'll need an empty hour to put this into, so let's delete an hour for 10 o'clock. So Send to Log, choose the date and time, hit OK, and the pad is added directly to the log. Another thing you can do with the pad is mix the contents down to a single media item on the media wall. This is really useful for creating programs or content that you want to use. Here we've got some examples of some small sections that some children have made. If we drag them into the pad, let's say we have this one followed by their little jingle, World War II piece, another jingle, and finally this podcast. So altogether we've got 2 minutes and 39 seconds of content spread over 5 items. Now we've already seen how we could save this and load it up later. If we wanted to make a single media item out of all these things, click on the Mix Send tab, and you then click on the Mix Down to Media Item. You have to choose where you want it to go. I'm going to make this one go to somewhere in the 2000 range. My next empty media item is 2012, so let's put it there. Okay, so let's just go across one. There's our mix down piece. As you can see, it's a single media item that is 2 minutes and 39 seconds long. If I drag it into a player,
really don't like it when me and my friends get called names.
It plays the completed item. We could of course have added some songs to this to make a longer show. Another thing we can do with this is use the same technique, but this time using the hook feature that we saw earlier to create something very similar to the auto hooks. First thing I'm going to do is click on New, and then I'm going to go to my jingle section, drag in my first jingle, then I'm going to go to my song section. I've got some more music at 3000. So let's use Gem, Backstreet Boys, James Blunt, and the Basement Jacks. It's a bit of a mix, but we'll give it a go. I'm going to put a jingle at the end of the item, and I'm going to put a jingle in the middle. So this would normally be 14 minutes and 11 seconds. But if I go back to the Home tab and tell it I'm only interested in the hooks, that now drops to 48 seconds. So if I was to mix that down now, let's drop it at 2013. Let's see what it created.
In the next 30 minutes, in the next 30 minutes, you'll hear.
So this is the first two hooks from the first two items.
Hot FM.
There's the jingle.
You're beautiful. You're beautiful. It's true. Do your thing, do your thing.
And finally, the final two hooks.
Now, here comes Hot FM, radio 24/7.
So there we have a production piece that was created in seconds and can now be dragged into the log or used anywhere else that you like. Before we move off from the pad, let's look at a few other options on the ribbon. On the Home tab, you can insert pauses and remove items. It's already seen how you can play things. You can also set the system to loop, in which case, once the pad is finished, it will go back to the beginning and start again. On the Mix Send tab, we already looked at how you can mix down items to a media item and also send to the log. But you can also mix down things directly to a file to be exported from Myriad. On the Edit tab, you can add media items from a range. Click on the range, you say the start range, let's say number 1, and the end range, say number 11. Say how many you want to add, so let's say 5, and it just adds them off from that range. You can also shuffle the contents of the pad, and if you have Myriad Schedule set up, you can use the Fill using Myriad Schedule option. This allows you to choose a clock to pick from, and the system will fill based on that clock. Finally, on the View tab, you can change from single view to standard view, where things look far more like media items, and you can also change some options to do with coloring and whether or not pictures should be shown. If you are using the Broadcast Radio Auto Player software, you can save pad lists directly to the Auto Player folder by clicking on Pad and then Save Pad List to Myriad Auto Player. Give it a title. Hit OK. Now this pad will then be available for playing in Auto Player. That brings us to the end of part 3 of the Myriad training videos. In this section, we saw how the dashboard could be used to show you what's playing, what's coming next. We looked at the difference between live and auto fade playout modes and how to use them in those shows. We looked at segue editing and how the segue editor could also be used for adding voice tracks. We reviewed on-air, off-air control status, looked at the smart info panel, and finally took a look at the pad. Have a little break now, and I'll see you in the next video.